Do you ever feel like your demanding 9 to 5 job is holding you back from getting started in real estate investing? Well, you're not alone. I felt the exact same way when I got started. I was like, how in the world am I going to have enough time to invest in rental properties while I'm working a 40-hour position as a pharmacist? Well, take it from me, it's definitely possible because I was able to do this and I built it up on the side while working as a pharmacist. Now I own 14 properties and I help others do this as well, build up their portfolio on the side while working a full-time job. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Ryan Chaw, your friendly pharmacist and real estate investor, and I help new investors get their very first profitable investment deal. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive straight into this. Now, there are three parts to building up a successful rental portfolio. The first part is obviously buying the property, right? The second part is making sure you find high quality tenants. And then the third part is managing the property. So let's go over part one, buying the right property, because if you buy the wrong property, it could just be negative cash flow. You could be putting money into it every single month and not seeing any profit. And that's definitely not what you want to do. Now, what's really important here is you have to realize you're not alone on this journey. In fact, you want to kind of connect with these team of experts and a team of helpers that will help you build that portfolio. So the first helper that I find is your realtor. You will want to contact a local realtor because you can have that realtor look for deals for you. So what I did when I started is I contacted this guy in Stockton, California, this local realtor, and he basically showed me the ropes. I said, look, I want to do a student rental near the college that I went to, and so I want to be very close to the college. And basically what he did was showed me all the houses that were within walkable distance to campus, and we walked through, I think, 3 or 4 properties before we eventually put an offer on one deal. And what's key here is you have to realize that the realtor will do a lot of the work for you. They can bring the deals to you. They can go through the house and say, hey, look, I would avoid this house because it has a roof leak. The other properties that we looked at were much better. And so they can kind of show you what to look out for and what to look for as well if you're an investor, for example. Once you've found a great realtor, the second thing you want to do is choose an investment strategy. Now, you have to be very careful with this because choosing the wrong strategy could mean you're not going to make any cash flow. So, for example, if you're doing traditional real estate investing where you buy a single family home and rent out to a family, most likely with the high interest rates and the high home costs, it's very hard to make any cash flow on that. So what I recommend doing is choosing a more creative strategy. What I do is college town housing, rent by the room to students and healthcare professionals. And so I'll rent out each room for like $700 a month. And if I get 6 bedrooms at a house, that means I'll be making $4,200 a month on that property. So you really have to choose the right strategy. Maybe for you it's Airbnb, or maybe you want to flip properties. But you do want to make sure you choose one that's working in the current housing environment that you're in. Now, the final thing you're going to want to do is once you find a great deal after working with your realtor is you're going to want to put an offer on the property. Now, a lot of people, they overthink this. They're like, oh, if I put an offer on the property, I'm basically going to be stuck in buying that property. I won't be able to back out. Well, that's not the case. You actually get to put an offer on the property and you have these contingencies in place which allow you to back out from buying the property if the property is not in very good shape. So just don't overthink it, put an offer on the property, and then once you do your inspections, you can figure out, okay, do I want to move forward with this deal or not? Now, the second thing we're going to talk about is finding great tenants. Obviously, the tenant is kind of the Achilles heel of real estate investing. If you find a bad tenant, basically you can do everything else right, but you're going to lose money because that tenant feels like they don't want to pay rent or they just stop paying for whatever reason. Maybe they trash your house or ruin your house, and so you have to pay for a lot of the repairs. And so choosing the right tenant is like the most important thing you can do in real estate investing. So what I do to target high quality tenants is I think about where my target tenant will hang out. I made this mistake in the very beginning where I put this for rent sign on with my number on the front lawn of my property, and I got calls from all sorts of people. Most of them, I would say 99% of them, were not my target market. People who are not making any income, people who are, just looking for a temporary stay. When I was actually looking for rent by the room college students. So it's really important to advertise in the right place, because if you don't, it's like fishing in an empty pond, basically fishing where there's no fish. So what I do nowadays is I go to Facebook groups, and there's a lot of Facebook housing groups dedicated for housing to college students. So let's say I'm looking for UC Berkeley housing, off-campus housing. I'll just type in UC Berkeley off-campus housing into the Facebook search bar, and I'll look for UC Berkeley off-campus housing groups, and I'll just go through them and see what people are typically charging. And then I'll also go ahead and place my ad on that housing group and make sure that my pricing is very reasonable, of course. Now, the last thing you're going to want to do here is vet the tenants, because what happened to me is I got this police call. I think it was around 9 p.m. at night, and the police said, hey, one of your tenants has 80 people over at the house, and they're throwing this wild party, and there's a loud music, and it's causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. And I was like, oh, shoot, I really messed up. I chose the wrong tenant. And what I did was basically what happened is I brought in one of my fraternity friends. He was in the same frat as me, and I knew that he was kind of a party type person, but I took him in anyways because I assumed, maybe he might change, or maybe things will be better as a tenant. And I was also very desperate to fill my vacancies, so I went ahead and did that. And that was a huge mistake. That's when he brought over 80 people over on a wild Halloween party. And I learned from that you really have to be careful. You have to vet your tenants. So one thing I look for these tenants is I look for professionalism. When they're contacting me and emailing me, basically, are they addressing me politely and professionally? Hi, Dr. Chaw, I'm looking for an accommodation nearby campus. Or are they more like, yo, what's up, dude? I'm looking for a crib. Or something like that, right? You have to be really cognizant of what they're saying to you and how they're expressing themselves. The other thing you want to do is see how responsive they are. Usually, the more responsive the tenant is, the more responsible they turn out to be. So are they getting their paperwork in right in time? Are they getting back to you right away and not ghosting you? So basically, a tenant who's really engaged and wants to find a place to stay. And then the final thing you want to look for is something called proof of income. Basically, either they or one of their parents makes enough income to be able to cover the rent. What I look for here is 3 times the monthly rent as monthly income. So let's say my rent is $700 a month. That means I want to be seeing $2,100 per month coming in either through one of their parents, so maybe on the pay stub, a bank statement, or maybe the student has financial aid, they have student loans, or they have some sort of stipend that covers their 3 times the monthly rent. If they do not have that, then generally speaking, I do not approve. The alternative is they have a lot of savings. Typically, if they have over $10,000 in savings, they're most likely going to be able to pay the rent. So you want to make sure that they have the ability to pay. Otherwise, you might bring in somebody who stops paying you and just ends up being a squatter. A squatter is basically somebody who stays at your property and waits for you to evict them, and they just don't pay any rent. And so it's really important to get that part correctly, because you want to have peace of mind. You don't want to have to be dealing with a lot of tenant headaches when you buy your properties. Speaking from experience of having 90 tenants, you really want to have a system in place for finding the right ones. All right, now the final piece of the puzzle is managing the property. You really need to have a good system for managing the property. Otherwise, you're going to be running around like a chicken with its head cut off, taking calls throughout your day, and it's going to just be a huge time suck on you if you don't have a good management system. And going back to what we talked about before, it's so important to find a team of experts to help you. So instead of the tenants calling you directly for issues at the house, they call your your property manager, for example. And what I do is I do my own marketing. I post on Facebook groups, I post on a lot of college housing sites, and I find the tenants. And what I do is I have somebody who's kind of the boots on the ground person to help the tenants move in, help resolve tenant versus tenant conflict, and be kind of like a mediator in that circumstance. And instead of paying that property manager a full 8 to 12% of my rental income, I instead pay them on a per case basis, anywhere from like $35 to $65 to resolve conflicts, to give tours, to go through the house with a checklist and check off all the boxes. Is everything in working condition? Are the appliances working? Is the carpet in good condition or does it need to be replaced? Basically, I use them as the boots on the ground whenever somebody needs to go over to the property to manage it. I also use that boots on the ground person to look after the contractors, make sure that they're going in, doing the work in a timely manner, and to check off that the work got done correctly. So you'll want to have that, but definitely don't pay them 8 to 12% of your rental income. Pay them on a per cases basis. To find this person, it could honestly just be a realtor. It could be a property management kind of company in the area. What I did for me is I found a property management company in the area, and then the person who was working under that company decided to just work directly with me, and they decided to charge me on a per case basis, which is exactly what I was looking for. Now, you'll also need to have a Rolodex of contractors, and you want to have a good contractor for each key aspect of the property. So the 6 key aspects of a property are your plumbing, your electricals, your HVAC, your foundation, your roof, and your sewage line. So for sewage line and water lines, you want to have a good plumber. You want to have a good electrician for the electricals. You need to have a good HVAC technician, a good roofer, somebody who's good with foundational stuff. And then if you have those key contractors and you also have backup contractors, basically when an emergency occurs, you don't have to worry as much. For example, for me, my furnace died in the middle of winter and it was like 0 degrees outside, and it could have been worse. It could have been a huge emergency. But what happened is I had a really good HVAC technician available that I just sent them in. And I think it took about a day or so to install the new furnace. And it was up and running. So the tenants weren't like freezing cold. Temporarily, I put in some space heaters, but obviously you need to have a good heating system if it's 0 degrees outside. So having those contractors ready and on hand and available for yourself will really cut down on all the emergencies and will turn emergencies into just run-of-the-day activities. Now, the last system you need to have for running an investment property is to have a bookkeeping system. So for me, I just started out using Excel sheets. I would record all the utilities on the Excel sheet and divide it evenly among the tenants at the house, and I would just bill them. I would also keep track of rent and if they paid the utilities on that sheet, and I will also keep track of any late fees that I charge on that sheet. Now, eventually, when you get to a couple properties, you might want to use a more advanced software like QuickBooks, which is the software my bookkeeper uses. And what QuickBooks does is it will load all of your bank accounts, everything into one location in the QuickBooks portal. And what's nice is a lot of like the bank accounts and everything, they update in real time every single day. So QuickBooks kind of just pulls all those accounts and has it in one place. And what it will do is you're allowed to set these rules where it basically allows you to label every transaction automatically. So if John Smith sends me rent, it will recognize that transaction in my bank account and it will automatically label it and say John Smith paid their rent or whatever. So that's basically the software that I use right now. Now, obviously, there's more advanced property management software out there. There's something called Buildium. There's something called Appfolio. Those are probably the biggest 2 property management softwares you might use in the future. But when you're just having one rental, honestly, just doing everything on Excel works out just fine. So that's pretty much it. Those are the three things you need to get right: buying the property, finding the high quality tenants, and then managing the property or having management systems in place. That way you can do this on the side of working your full-time job. And eventually, what's really cool is once you have a couple properties, maybe 4 or 5, the cash flow from those properties can actually replace your W-2 income. So you can slowly either start working part-time as a W-2, or you can even quit completely and have that financial independence, have that financial freedom. So the lesson here is it's not that you don't have time to do real estate investing while working a full-time job. It's about using the time that you do have available more efficiently. And that's what I did. I was even working a lot of overtime when I first got started. And I just aimed for buying one property a year because it felt like a very safe and realistic goal for me. And then I continued to scale until I basically had 14 properties. Now, there's one more point I want to make, and it's that a lot of people on social media, they'll say like, you want to burn all your bridges and go into entrepreneurship or real estate full time and not work your W-2 job, quit your W-2 job. I don't think that's very realistic. The first reason I don't think that's realistic is because in order to get funding, in order to get a mortgage on a property, you basically need to have some sort of income coming in or income showing. And the easiest way to do that is to have a W-2. In fact, as a W-2 worker, usually you get very good, favorable loan terms. You'll get lower interest rates, you'll get better origination fees or lower origination fees, and it allows you to buy multiple properties a lot easier and a lot faster. The other thing is you want to have that income available so that in case something goes wrong on your property, maybe you have to replace a broken appliance, you do have the funds available from the W-2 in order to cover that in case of an emergency. Not saying that emergencies will happen, but you want to be prepared for it in case it does. So that's pretty much all I wanted to share with you on this video. If you have any questions about this particular topic, please drop them in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you. And if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends or others who are just really struggling with getting started in real estate investing. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on next week's video.